Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Mary Rocha. I am a professional pet stylist located in Harriman, Utah at Pet Suites. Certifications that I have are AKC Safe, Canine CPR and First Aid, specifically in a salon environment, and then also AKC PGC or Professional Grooming Credential. Sorry, say that one slow because I always mess it up. Also, I officially have full 3 years of grooming experience, so fun milestone to hit, and looking forward to a lot more. Today's video is going to be a lot different from my other videos. I originally planned on doing another one of our coat care or coat type videos, but we have had a lot happen in our family the past month. I'm filming this at the end of July. It's going to go up the second half of August, so about a month ahead. But yeah, this month I do just want to say thank you to all my clients who have hung in there, because we have been in the ER 2 weekends in a row, and I know that I called out a couple times, and we've had family vacations. So I appreciate you just being patient and, you know, allowing me to reschedule you a little funky, taking a little longer with your dog because we're a little overbooked at the moment. But yeah, thank you for hanging in there. I appreciate it. But anyways, today we're gonna do hot takes with Mary, because I know, well, Rue was gonna be my, she's over there in the corner. She was gonna be my, demo dog for our coat types video, and she was spayed 2 weeks ago. So she just got her first bath back, but she's still, not at 100%. But hopefully soon she'll be there so that we can do that. Yeah, sorry if you see me looking over there, it's because she's acting fishy. I might have to take her out to go to the bathroom in between some of these takes. But yeah, so we're gonna get into this. Hello, Editing Mary here. Sorry this video is a little more shaky. It's because I'm not sitting down with my phone at a stationary place. But I forgot to mention that a hot take is simply an opinion that I have that is not like common or like popular. So all of these are my opinions. None of this is fact. Please do not take this like very seriously. It's just a more fun video that I've seen a lot of other creators doing at this point. But yeah, no judgments. I say this at the end of the video too, but if a dog comes in, I'm obviously not judging the pet parent if the dog has long nails. I do understand that life happens, and things come up, and maybe you had to go a couple of weeks extra without trimming your dog's nails, or maybe like me, you were very pregnant and sick and you couldn't brush your doodle. I understand that. So I know, again, no judgment as a dog groomer, but these are just some fun opinions that I have. So we're gonna get into this. I have broken my hot takes down into 2 groups. One is grooming only, and then the second one is just dogs in general. So we will just hop right on into it. I'm going to try as well to keep each hot take to about 2 to 3 minutes tops as I explain it, and then yeah, we'll do a little in between so that you can skip through your hot takes to the ones you want to hear about, I guess. So yes, hot take number 1: if you can't afford to groom your dog, you shouldn't own your dog. I think this one's pretty straightforward. Grooming is very vital to your dog's health and safety. And if you get a doodle and you can't afford to bring it in every every 6 to 8 weeks, and brush it at home, you should not have that dog. Or you should be okay with having it cut very short to a length that is maintainable. But even if you have like a lab, I don't think that you should own that lab unless you're, able to give it baths and trim its nails, because that is also a part of their, health and safety as well. So yeah, that's hot take number 1. And now we'll go on to the next one. Okay, hot take number 2. If your dog is matted, it's your fault for not brushing it properly. Again, this one's pretty straightforward. Dogs cannot brush themselves, especially our curly-coated friends, especially too when they're in their puppy phase and they're losing that puppy coat that gets trapped so easily. If you're not brushing it and it gets matted, do not be mad when we have to shave it. Obviously, a groomer is not going to say, oh my goodness, it's all your fault, how dare you do this? But a good groomer will then educate you so that you can brush properly, especially if you do want a more fluffy dog. And again, if you cannot maintain that dog at home in a longer cut, then you need to be okay with having a shorter cut or bringing it in much more frequently for grooming. And much more frequently, I mean every 3 to 4 weeks, so that a stylist can properly brush and maintain the coat for you. Okay, hot take number 3. You should educate yourself on your dog's grooming needs before you buy or adopt one. And I will go over some of this in a later hot take as well, but you should be getting a dog that matches your lifestyle, not a dog that matches the Instagram look that you want. So for example, a lot of pet parents buy a doodle because they want a cute fluffy dog, when they don't realize doodles were bred from 2 working class dogs. Poodles technically are non-sporting, but they were originally bred as like water retrieving dogs, so they do have a lot of like working class mindset. Most pet parents do not know this. And then the other dog that they're bred with 90% of the time is a very working class breed dog. So they have a lot of energy, a lot of independence, and a lot of people interpret that the wrong way, just thinking, oh, I need to walk them more often or play fetch with them more often, but that's not the case. When realistically, maybe a lab, which yes is a working class dog, but they're also very, kind of lazy, easygoing dogs, or a golden retriever would suit your lifestyle a lot better. Or maybe you just want a little cute companion dog. Instead of a big fluffy dog, maybe a smaller dog is a little more manageable. Smaller dogs, a lot of the times too, you can let them get away with bad behaviors because you can just pick them up and put them in their kennel, or pick them up and hold them, instead of trying to have to fight, a big dog that has bad manners. So those are all things to consider, but definitely the grooming needs to be considered as well. Again, if it's not in your financial capability to bring a doodle in every 4 to 8 weeks for a groom, especially if you want it longer, or to be brushing every single night, then you should not own a doodle or a poodle, because those are breeds that require daily brushing and very extensive grooming. Then maybe you should be looking at a shorter coated breed, or just having a shorter haircut on your dog. But then again, you need to still be bringing it in every 6 to 8 weeks for a haircut. So just keep those things in consideration before you buy your dog. Okay, hot take number 4, I believe we're on. Groomers should be licensed. We do work in a career field where it is unregulated, essentially. Obviously, if you are at an established, grooming salon, or you work at a corporation, there is 90% of the time some type of certification that they provide to educate the groomers properly, or you have to pass essentially like a mini groom test when you apply for the job, if you're already an established groomer, to be able to be hired and work there. At PetSmart, at least, they do put you through their pretty extensive grooming course, and it can, be hit or miss again. They do teach you everything you need to know, luckily, to be a successful groomer, or at least to get started in being a successful groomer. Whereas a lot of kind of like the technical details, it really does depend on who your teacher or your advisor is during that time. But they do teach you everything you need to know. I have worked now with 2 people that have gotten different certifications, not from PetSmart, and they were not taught everything. Some things they don't know how to do is put bows in hair, which is kind of crazy. And then do anal gland expressions, which we talked about in our last video. They don't know like how to handle very out of control dogs. There's a lot of things like that. However, that's just, kind of more of the business side of it. There are so many groomers that just groom out of their home because they can make money that way, and that's very dangerous. They don't have any certification. They maybe watched a couple YouTube videos and they figured, I can give it a try, let me do it. It can't be that hard. It's not that hard until, you get a very hard to handle dog, or you do an injury. And unfortunately, injuries do happen. So I do think groomers should be licensed, just like hair salons and hairstylists should be licensed as well. I think that the initial certification should last like maybe, a couple years, and then you have to do some sort of continuing education to keep up your certification. Hairstyles and techniques are changing constantly. There's so much that you can do to always be improving, and you can implement that into keeping up some sort of a certification. Groomers should be certified and licensed. Okay, next hot take, and this kind of goes along with the last one, but you should research your groomer. Just because your neighbor is doing haircuts for $20 out of their house does not mean you should go to them. It might be a good deal until you get Fluffy back and they look either absolutely terrible or they have an injury and they're not going to pay for it because they don't have the money to take your dog to the vet, which is not good. But yeah, even if you're going to an established salon or business, you should ask questions and research your groomer. See what certifications they have. See if they are continuing their education. Those are all like very green flags for groomers. Red flags for groomers are no certifications. They are not continuing their education. They don't want you to like be back and see like where they're going to be working with your dog. And a lot of times they won't answer questions. But you should definitely research your groomer. Make sure that other people are leaving reviews that they're safe. There's so much that you can do besides just asking the groomer themselves. You can read reviews online. Again, sometimes hit or miss, because a lot of times reviews are either the worst of the worst and the best of the best. There's hardly ever in between. You can also find a lot of groomers too. Like I would be willing to provide, with my client's permission, to provide other clients information so that they can reach out and ask, how I am as a groomer. You should definitely be researching your groomer. You are giving, most of the time, what people think of their dogs as their babies and a member of their family. You're handing them over to a stranger for 3-4 hours at a time. You should feel comfortable with them being in that person's care, which means you should research who you're getting your dog groomed with. Okay, next hot take. You should ask your groomer questions. Obviously, you need to be talking about the haircut and what type of care they'll be getting at the groomer. However, there's more questions that a lot of pet parents do not ask that should be asked. Some that I think are very good are, what do you do if a dog is stressing you out? For me personally, I take a break, I put the dog away, maybe I'll get a different dog out. Sometimes me and the dog just need a break from each other, and then I can come back and finish the groom. A lot of times the dog will be calmer. However, I have worked with people that don't do that, and they will fight the dog and do things that are not very safe to the dog throughout the groom. So that's a good question to ask. Another good question to ask is, what are your certifications? What do you do if there's an injury? There's so many other questions that you can be asking to give you more information as a pet parent, to make you feel secure in the fact that your dog is safe with that person for whatever length of time. Other good questions to ask are like, what are areas that you're trying to improve in? What are dogs and haircuts that you love to do? That can tell a lot. If they are like, oh, I just like the teddy bear cut, that's what every dog gets. So you can kind of tell most of the time that they haven't been super pushed out of their comfort zone. Yeah, and there's just so many questions that you can ask that will give you as a pet parent a better, understanding and more information about the groomer themselves. Okay, next hot take. You guys are gonna get sick of me saying that this video. The next hot take: an exact grooming quote for the price should not be given until a full hands-on assessment is done of your dog. The reason for this is your dog might look nice and fluffy, but by the surface, there might be hidden mats, and then that is a dematting fee at most places. Maybe Lucky has a very long nail, or a broken nail that needs further attention, and that can be another fee added on. Or maybe the stylist thinks that your dog needs a conditioner because it has some little, pin knots that need to come out, and that will help your dog be more comfortable. There's so many little things. The other thing too is, depending on what haircut you get, some haircuts require more time and hand scissoring, so a scissoring fee might be added on if it goes, above the like base time essentially for the groom. But if you do just call a salon and say, what do you charge for this dog? Just know 99% of the time you're going to be given an estimate and then a stipulation. It'll be, this is usually what is charged for this size of dog. However, it may be more depending on the condition of your dog's coat. That is just that, hey, it might be, for a Labradoodle, I generally charge 100 to 110, but if it's matted, that price is going to shoot up to 150 because now I have to spend extra time dematting that dog. And then that way you're not blindsided. But you should not be given an exact grooming quote until the groomer that's going to be working on your dog sees the dog and knows exactly how much time and attention is going to go into that dog, and therefore affect the price. Okay, next, hot take. Sorry, my brain is so dead from everything that's going on. But next hot take, if your dog groomer does not go over all of the grooming details, they are bad. If you just hand your dog over to the groomer and they don't say a single word to you about the haircut or what's going to be done, and they just take your dog back and do what they think is best, personally, I do not think that is okay. You are the pet owner. You should have a say in what is done to your dog. Obviously, if the dog is matted, that is kind of a different case, but I'm still going to discuss with the pet parent about the shaving and what to expect after, and if we can save the head and tail to be a little fluffier, and then what we can do to prevent that in the future. We're still going to have a discussion about that. But if your dog's in good care, even, there should still be a discussion of, what do you want done with the body? What do you want? Do you want the legs a little longer so they look fluffier? How do you want the head? Some things that I do skip are tail and ear, because there's not very many types of tail and ear, unless they're a new client, obviously. But you can generally tell based on how the ear grows out or the tail grows out what they got in the last appointment. And like I said, if they're a new client, I will just say, hey, do you want the tail done the same as last time, or the ears? And sometimes they'll say, no, I want them shorter or longer, and then I know how to go from there. But yeah, even with my very well-established clients that have been coming to me now for a year and a half at this location, they get the same exact haircut every single time. I always ask them, hello, do you want the same haircut as last time? Are there any changes? That way, I give them the opportunity to do that. Other things that I discuss with the pet parent are any add-ons, so nail grinding, teeth brushing, conditioner, paw pad, balm, and anal gland expression if that's something they're interested in. All those also affect the health of your dog. All right, next hot take. Private salons are not always better than corporate salons. Private salons, I mean, you know, the cute little mom and pop shop that's set up in the cute little strip mall, and like they're still well established probably, but and then corporations, you have PetSmart, Petco, a lot of boarding facilities. Yes, and this is where I'm going to come from this. A lot of private salons don't train their employees very well. Some of them do offer like apprenticeships, and that's very awesome, or like additional training, and those are great. You can find those private salons. However, that's not always the case. Sometimes they hire people not with a lot of training and skill, and then they don't help them grow as a person. A lot of times they have less rules, which sometimes can be good if your dog, can behave themselves. But if you have a dog that, can't have, any contact with other dogs, they are calmer in a kennel, some of those things, or like they try to jump off a table, or you're worried about their safety, a lot of times having more rules will be in a benefit to you. Another thing too is most dog grooming places will have insurance just in case an injury does happen. If you go to a private salon that doesn't have that, sometimes they won't take your dog to the vet, and they'll send it to you and tell you have to take them to the vet, and then you have a crazy bill for your dog needing stitches because they were cut. A lot of private salons though, especially if they're very well established and awesome, they do have that insurance. Another thing too that I have heard is a lot of private salons don't have, and also I did interview at so many private salons when I swapped from PetSmart to Pet Suites. And this is one of the things I actually asked about as a groomer, was what their procedure was for if an accident or an emergency happened. Many of them didn't really have an answer. They're just like, well, we kind of like, they were very wishy-washy about it. The grooming salons that I ended up liking, and there was a couple private salons in the area too that had a very specific procedure of what to do if that happened. But those are all things you can ask the salon themselves before booking with them. But yeah, just do your research, especially when going private, especially if it's out of a home, versus taking them to a well-established salon or a corporate salon. Okay, next hot take. Long nails on your dog is a form of neglect. We talked about this a lot in our nail video, nail trimming video, but long nails can cause a lot of pain and discomfort in your dog and can lead especially to like arthritis and joint and hip pain further on down the road. Just because your dog doesn't let you trim the nails, that then means that you just don't trim them at all. If your dog walks a lot on the sidewalk, that does not always mean that they're going to just grind their nails down naturally. You still should take them in to make sure those nails are all the way down. Obviously, if it's then like they come in a few times and the nails, not the nail salon, the groomer tells you, hey, we can't take anything off because they're grinded down so much, that is fine. I've only really seen that on a very handful of dogs though in my 3 years of experience. And they were corgis, surprisingly. They walked on asphalt all the time, and their nails were so short that actually they would bleed almost all the time from walking on cement. We had to like plead with the pet parent to take them off of, or to bring them inside, because I believe, if I remember right, they were on a cement pad in a backyard, and that was causing crazy grinding to go down on their nails. But nail care on your dog is vital for their health. So please, please, please either learn how to cut them at home. I do have my video where I show you, or get them into a pet stylist or a groomer who can do it for you. Okay, next hot take. The most expensive groom does not equal the best groom for your dog. And also, the least expensive groom also does not equal the best cut for your dog. I guess firstly, the most expensive groom, usually my most expensive grooms are not the most beautifully hand scissored dogs, those dogs usually come in very often, and so I don't have to upcharge for matting or de-shedding or, you know, whatever else needs to happen. They're pretty much the same price every single time. However, my most expensive grooms usually are crazy de-sheds and de-mats on, you know, larger breeds like Great Pyrenees, Huskies, etc. And then de-mats on doodles. If a doodle is matted nose to tail, it's usually a $40 to $50 upcharge for the dematting, depending on how long it takes. So that makes, you know, your $100 groom go to $150. Rarely do I charge more than, you know, $110. That's what I was thinking, for a well-maintained dog. Very rare for me to do that. And that's the base price. That's not including like nail grinding, teeth brushing, etc. But yeah, the most expensive groom does not always mean the best groom. And by best, I mean best looking, I guess. And then vice versa, least expensive groom also is not always the best groom. If you take your dog, you know, to your neighbor who's doing haircuts for $20 because she just learned on YouTube, that's not going to be the best groom for your dog, unless by some miracle she's just a total natural at it. Get your pet into a professional with, you know, who has been trained and maybe even has certifications. All right, next hot take. Not every cut will look good on every dog. I think the best example I can give is there are a lot of schnoodles or schnauzer mixed with a doodle, or mixed with a poodle, sorry, but schnoodles, and their pet parents will bring them to me and say, I want them to look like a schnauzer. And it takes everything in me not to turn around and say, well, you should have gotten a schnauzer then. The reason is, like, poodle's hair poofs out. Schnauzer's hair lays flat. And that's based on their coat type. A schnauzer has a wiry coat. A poodle has a curly coat. And so essentially what that means is now you have a double-coated poodle whose hair puffs out. Obviously, there is a wide variety in hair textures. We will be doing a doodle video soon, where I will go over all of this in more detail. But if you try to put eyebrows on hair that wants to stick up instead of stick forward over the muzzle, it looks really funny. I can dry it that way and I can hairspray it that way even, but within a few days, it's going to look really funny again. So not always like the haircut that you want is going to look best for your dog. I will do it though if you want it. Just know that maybe within a couple of days it might look really funny. And I will tell you too, like there's some dogs and owners that come in and say, I want you just to spot shave the mats out, and they have, you know, 2 inches of fur. And I tell them, I say, well, your dog might look a little like Swiss cheese because I can't really blend a 10 blade with 2 inches. I can blend a 5 and a 1/2 inch, or I can blend a 1.5 inch and a 2 inch. But I can't, you know, that's too big of an extreme for my shears to be able to blend that. So your dog is going to look like Swiss cheese. And some pet parents are fine with that because they just like a fluffy dog, but a lot of them want their dog also to look good, so they're not okay with that. So that's something I will always discuss with you, and we'll try to find a kind of medium ground that you love, but will also look good, you know, for the 6 to 8 weeks that you have your dog at home. All right, hot take. I don't remember what number this is. This one was inspired a little bit. I was on Instagram lately and I follow Posit Maine, which is a pretty bougie, really great private salon in, I believe it's California. And they have, their CEO has his own account called the CEO Grooms, and he gives a lot of like groomer advice, business advice, and then just, you know, grooming in general. But on one of his last reels, he showed a dog that had come in that had clearly been groomed by somebody that was a little bit newer to grooming, and then his version of that where he lifted the face up, made the whole thing nice and round, instead of having the dog have like a little mustache almost. it wasn't a bad groom, but it wasn't the better groom, you know. But this started, you know, and I've been thinking about this a lot, is that I want to be getting better every single groom on a dog. And it's not that hard, right? Because every single time you see a dog, it should be more comfortable with you as a groomer, especially if you're going to the same person. You should be getting better and understand, you know, that dog's particular anatomy, especially around the face and head, which is the biggest part, I think. Know what the dog likes and doesn't like so that you can adapt a lot easier, and be, you know, aware if they're going to flinch at something so you don't take a chunk of hair out. But your groomer should be getting better every single groom. And sometimes, you know, they might try something where they're like, hey, I tried this and let me know how it looks. And if you don't like it, you could just tell them. That is kind of like the outlier. They're still trying something, trying to get better. It might not be exactly what, you know, you wanted or asked for. As long, like, I'll tweak things on my grooms as long as it's like little. And if it's a bigger thing, I will ask the pet parent though. But by tweaking little things and by trying to get better and better every single groom, then not only are you providing a better service for your pet parents, but you're also improving your skills as a dog groomer. And that is a good thing. That's what we want. That's my favorite thing about this career, is that there is like infinite potential for growth and for learning, because there are so many breeds of dogs and so many different haircuts and techniques, and all the time people are coming up with new ones. So you should be, as a groomer, I think, proactively going after those and getting better and learning and trying them out. All right, next hot take. Even if you don't use a kennel at home, you should kennel train your dog. And this one you might think would fall into the dog category, but it's in the grooming category for a reason. Most groomers, unless they are one-on-one and they specifically say that they do not kennel your dog is most likely going to be kenneled at some point during their groom. The reason for this is air drying and kennel drying, especially if your dog does not do well with the velocity dryer. If your dog needs a break, sometimes dogs do need a break. A lot of groomers, especially at like established salons and corporations, do the conveyor belt method, as it's called, where, you know, I'll bathe all my dogs and then I'll put them in the kennels to kind of give them a break, let them air dry, get a breather, and I'll work essentially on which dogs need their coat dried first. Usually that's doodles and poodles, unless I have notes that they do good kennel drying and their coat still looks fine, or they're getting a very short length and they don't need it poofed out super much. And then go on to, you know, the bath dogs and the other groom dogs that maybe don't need their hair poofed out and like blow dried a certain way, essentially. Obviously, I do want to get to the point where I do one-on-one grooming or like do 2 dogs at a time. But for now, this is how I have to do it to make money. Because even though I love my job, at the end of the day, it is also, you know, providing income for my family. But you should have your dog comfortable with the kennel so that when they do go to the groomer, they're not freaking out when they're in a kennel. They can still be calm and comfortable and stress-free. Another area that a dog will go into a kennel 9 times out of 10 is the vet. If you go and have your dog have any type of surgery, they will be in a kennel at the vet at some point. A lot of times it's even during their recovery after surgery. So that is a time you do not want your dog to be freaking out in the kennel. You want them to be nice and calm and cool and collected. So it is a very good idea to at least kennel train your dog to get them comfortable with going in and out of and staying in there for long periods of time. All right, next hot take. We hear a lot that dog grooming is a very physically demanding job, and that is true. We are working with our hands, bending over weird to get, you know, under a certain part of your dog while they still are standing perfectly. There's a lot in lifting, you know, big dogs up, bending down. There's so much that goes into the physical aspect of grooming. However, dog grooming is as much mental and emotional as it is physical. The mental game, as a dog groomer, you have to stay calm and cool and collected. If you are overexcited or like really upset, your dog is going to feed off of that energy. Like I've seen it time and time again. If I start to get frustrated, then a dog will like shut down, or they then will get, anxious and upset. If I am going, oh my goodness, you're such a good dog, you're so good, then that dog is going to get excited and, start to, dance around the table. It might even try to jump, and that's not good. So you do need to stay cool and collected, and that is a big mental game, especially when you're working with a very difficult dog. The other part is emotional. As a dog groomer, you do get attached to your clients. It was very hard when I actually went on maternity leave and came back and found a lot of my, long-term clients that had said that they were going to stick with me. They found that the other groomer, Max, groomed for a lot less. And that was his pricing. That's fine, not his fault at all. And I get it, the economy is tough, but it was very hard emotionally for me because I had already put so much time and effort and work into these dogs. I left, very detailed notes so that the other groomer didn't have to do any of that work. It was all right there, no guesswork, no talking with the pet parent about what they want. It was all listed right there, what they needed to do. And so that was very hard emotionally for me. And so you do get very attached to your groom clients as a dog groomer, even though they are not living with you 24/7. And that is a good thing because that means that you care for your clients. All right, last hot take in our grooming section, and this one, a lot of pet parents I don't think understand, but I feel like dog professionals understand this very well. But groomers, and especially good groomers, are just as important to your dog's health as your vet is. Obviously, your vet is there to vaccinate your dog and do all those health things, but you only see the vet once, maybe twice a year, if your dog is in decent health or good health. However, if you are going to the groomer regularly, you're seeing the groomer every 4 to 8 weeks, depending on, how often you get them in. During that time, your groomer is looking over every single inch of your dog's body. We are lifting and moving body parts. We are paying attention to their like emotional state and if they are, excited, nervous, shy, whatever. And a good groomer will, at the end of the groom, report anything that they find out of the ordinary. If I see a new mole or a lump, I will report that to the pet parent. There was an instance with one of my dogs, Chili. I actually just did her again this week, literally I think 2 days ago, and she had a mole on her neck, and I saw it accidentally, moles, it's a very easy spot to, scrape with the blade, and so it did bleed, and so I did tell the pet parent, there's a mole here, you just might want to get it checked out. Also, there will be a scab on it, but it is fine, it has stopped bleeding. She got it checked out. It wasn't anything serious, but she did want to get it removed, and so they did end up getting it removed. However, there are many instances I have heard from, my mentors and trainers back at PetSmart where they would tell a pet parent about a mole, and it turned out it was cancerous, and they caught the cancer way before it became a big issue. So they were able just to take, the little mole off, and then the dog was fine. Whereas if that hadn't been reported or they hadn't gone to the groomer, who knows, it might have become a very tragic story. Other things that groomers can figure out is, depending on the color of your anal glands and texture, there might be an internal issue. If your dog is very agitated or sensitive around a certain body part, that's an area you might want to get checked out. Or if their legs aren't lifting and they're a little sensitive around that, that could mean arthritis is happening. Again, something you might want to get checked out by a vet. So all of these things are just examples that groomers can catch early on of, bigger and harder health issues if, they weren't seen early on. All right, so that concludes our hot takes on grooming, grooming specific, I guess. So now we're gonna move on to just my hot takes with dogs in general. All right, so hot take number one for general dogs. and this one shouldn't come to a surprise to anyone who has watched my content or knows me, but all dogs, unless they are part of an ethical breeding or show or conformation competitions, should be spayed and neutered. I personally believe that there is no reason for you to not spay and neuter your dog, especially if you are just a pet owner. Obviously, if you are an ethical breeder and that dog is a part of your program, there is a reason for it not to be spayed and neutered. But there's just so much positive that comes from it. We literally also just got Rue spayed at the Salt Lake Spay and Neuter Clinic here in Salt Lake City. It was $150 for a basic spay. If I overheard correctly, the neuter was about $100. So very, very affordable prices. You don't have to go to, your vet where they charge you $600, $700, $800. There are options to get it done like at an affordable price. You don't have to worry about your dog getting pregnant or impregnating others, which means you don't have to worry about puppies. Because if your dog has puppies, you are responsible for the life of that puppy. Even if you give that dog away, something could happen to the owner and it needs to be rehomed. You're still responsible because you helped bring that dog into the world. You also get rid of the risk of certain cancers in dogs, which is actually, they're very, very high, especially in, all the female reproductive organs. You get rid of that chance. So yes, very, very good reasons. You also, when you spay and neuter your dog, get rid of a lot of behavioral issues as well. Some behaviors are learned, but a lot of some of the more, naughty behaviors that especially puppies do, and then adult dogs that continue on, they come because the dog still has their reproductive organs and all those hormones are fluctuating. So spay and neuter your dog. All right, on to our next hot take. And again, this one shouldn't be a surprise, but you should look at adopting first and then go to ethical breeders to shop if no dogs fit your needs, lifestyles, and then wants. Obviously, needs and lifestyle should come first, want should come second. Want is like the look of the dog, unless, for me, the look of the dog is important because my dog is now, a part of my work. But we also made sure that said dog fit into our lifestyle. But if you're not a groomer going after, multiple certifications, then you need to make sure that dog very much fits your lifestyle first. But yeah, there are so many adoption agencies. It's not just going to your local animal shelter. There are also other rescues in the area. There are some rescues that bring dogs in from high kill shelters in other states and areas around the world. There's rehoming agencies too, so you can find perfectly trained, well-behaved dogs that something happened to their pet parent. Maybe they're moving, maybe they got sick and can't take care of their dog anymore, and it needs to be rehomed. So there are many, many options to look at before going to a breeder. And then when you go to a breeder, don't go to your neighbor who's doing it in their backyard. Don't go to a puppy store because that most likely is from a puppy mill. Research and find an ethical breeder that does that breed. But yeah, we did this with Rue. We looked at adoption. We messaged many pet parents that were looking to rehome. We were just a little too far from their location that they felt comfortable with. And then a lot of the poodle rescues are in the Midwest, and they only let you adopt if you're within so many miles because they don't want the dog to travel and then be like, oops, they don't actually fit our family, and have to send them back because that's a lot of cost and a lot of stress on the dog. But yes, look at adopting first, and then if nothing fits the lifestyle and needs that you have with your dog, then you can move on to breeders. All right, next hot take. Overweight dogs are just as neglected as underweight dogs. BB, you guys should all know this by now. She is our true shelter dog, or a true rescue dog, we call her, because she was severely neglected as a puppy and was severely underweight, so much so that she had a huge growth stint. Also, sorry if you hear any chewing on things. Rue is chewing at her gate right now, so if I stare at her, she stops sometimes. But anyway, so she was like severely on the low end of the spectrum, but if your dog is overweight, it's going to have a lot of the same health issues. Obviously not with, growing and stuff, but it can have, a lot of hip and joint problems. It can get early arthritis. Their dogs can have like all sorts of heart and lung diseases when they're overweight. And then it's just uncomfortable to them. Their bodies were not made to be that big. So if your dog is overweight, which there is an overweight pet epidemic in the United States. Hey! Shh. But there is an overweight dog epidemic in the United States, so please, don't just let your dog free feed. Don't feed them any table scrap that they beg for. Cover the trash can. There are plenty of easy, solutions that will help. And it might even save you money because maybe your dog is eating double what they're supposed to for a healthy body weight. And then if you cut their food down to what it's supposed to be, then you'll be stretching that food even further. So you might find it actually is better for you in the long run as well. But yeah, watch your dog's weight. It's pretty easy to see a healthy, fit dog that looks good versus an overweight dog. Don't neglect your dogs though. All right, next hot take. If you bring your dog into public places, they should not be reactive or aggressive. Reactive means that they hear a sound and they try to go after it or chase it. And by public places, I mean like the grocery store or to a mall. A lot of malls will allow dogs as long as they're well behaved, even if they're not service animals. Airports, if you have an emotional support dog, whether that's used actually for emotional support or not, make sure your dog is also well behaved and not reactive. Places that are very public. By public places, I don't necessarily mean the dog park, or the local park that you go to, or outside on the street on your walks. Those are perfectly fine. But very, very public places where there are a lot of people. I understand that it's difficult because I have a very non-reactive dog, which is Chani, and then I have a very reactive dog on the other, and she's getting better, but that's Bijaz. And they both, are working on different skills, but we definitely could not bring BB into a public place and have her be okay. She might get very overstimulated, not okay for the dog, but then it's also not okay for the people that are there, because then those people, whether they want to or not, now have to worry about your dog as well, and if it's gonna, go after them or not. Obviously, to the aggression, that one's just, I think, a given. Do not bring an aggressive dog to, around a lot of people. The only exception I would give with this one is if you are training a dog, but that would be under the supervision of a trainer, or, they give you very specific things to work on and steps that you kind of have to almost pass off before moving on to the next one. All right, my next hot take. And this one, for a lot of the people that I love and that come into my house, is a big deal, and it bugs me. But dog hair in the house isn't as big deal as people make it out to be. If you're a responsible dog owner and your dog is, bathed regularly, yes, dog hair may not be fun sticking to clothes, or couches or anything, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. I mean, our human hair sheds, we have dead skin cells everywhere. That it's the exact same for dogs. They lose their hair and shed. They also have, dead skin cells that are everywhere, but for some reason dog hair people are very nitpicky about. If you have loved ones that like to come over or close friends, hopefully they're aware that you have a shedding dog, and then all they have to do is not wear the black pair of pants or their really nice clothes. Or if they don't love it, meet somewhere else, but don't go to somebody's house who has a dog and expect it to be perfectly clean with no dog hair anywhere. because I mean, I don't think it's that big of a deal. You chose to have the dog with you, and that's a part of it. And like, if you really think it's that big of a deal, just vacuum more, get your dog in for de-sheds more. If you bathe them more regularly too, that will help take a lot of that hair off. But I don't think dog hair in the house is that big of a deal. I live in it at this point. Okay, next hot take. And this one again, if you know me, it's very, very kind of cut and dry. But kids and teens should not be allowed to walk their dog unsupervised. And this comes from quite a few experiences that I have had. Obviously, I was a teenager who had a little Shorkie, and I liked to walk her a lot. Luckily, we did not have an area that was very high traffic, at least when I would walk her. And we didn't have to walk her very often because she was so tiny and got all of her exercise in the house in our giant backyard. But we've had two incidences that have been kind of scary and could have resulted in serious injury. Number one was, it was like a between 5 and 8 year old girl was walking their dog. This was at our old apartment complex in Colorado. The dog happened to be dog aggressive, at least somewhat, or very reactive. My husband was walking BB and Chani just to their normal potty spot. The dog, I guess, also liked to potty there or thought that it was his turf. Saw BB going to the bathroom, got mad, and went and bit her and started attacking her. The little girl froze because she was like, oh my goodness, my best friend is being mean or whatever. It's a kid. They don't know what to do in these situations. My husband had to help separate the dogs without getting hurt. He was almost about to kick the dog when luckily Chani, he's not aggressive with dogs or animals or anything, but the dog was not letting go of BB and he didn't want to get hurt as well. Luckily, Chani stepped in, bit the dog back, the dog let go, Chani let go, and then my husband was able to just take our dogs quickly back to our apartment. But very scary. We weren't able to exchange numbers to get animal control involved, even though they very much should have been, because it was, a kid without any adult supervision anywhere, and we didn't know whose dog it was. So yeah, that's incident number one. Number two, this one was more recently, I was walking our girls on our normal route that we would do before it got super hot, in the afternoon, with our baby in the stroller. And we were doing, some training with heeling, which our girls were doing very good on, but we were passing by the section where there's higher sections of stairs, and so you can't see around them because of the walls. And there was a kid with his dog that we couldn't see either of them standing back there, and he was probably 12 to 13, so a little bit older, but his dog was reactive, jumped out at Chani. I, of course, having my baby on me, was not happy, and we quickly, walked away, but the dog was not well controlled on the leash at all. He was on a retractable leash, so he was trying to still get after Chani, not to necessarily bite, but to play. Luckily, Chani responded very well to my commands and kept walking. BB, on the other hand, was kind of like, what the heck, why are you trying to mess with us? And she wasn't being aggressive, but she was, getting a little flustered, I would say. But yeah, if that dog was aggressive, it could have been a serious injury. My baby could have been injured. And honestly, it's not necessarily the kid's fault. I think that it lies with the adults in the room. So just don't let your kids and teens walk their dog. Oh, and the teens too, yes, they have a little more brain power, but when you go to a teen as an adult and say, why, I need your number so that we can get insurance information because your dog just attacked mine, or I need your mom's number, give it to me. A lot of them will be like, yeah, whatever. I mean, I was a teenager. We all know how it goes. So just for the safety of everyone, don't let your kids or teens walk your dog without supervision. I know it's a little bit harder, but you as the adult in the room need to step it up and make sure that everybody is safe. All right, next hot take. Young kids and babies should never be left alone with a dog, no matter how well behaved they are. And we are very lucky. We have very well-behaved dogs that love our baby, but there's always room for someone to get hurt. Right now, our baby is at the age where she's liking to climb, and Chani lets her climb on her. She loves it. She loves to have the baby climb on her, and she'll give the baby kisses. But if the baby, pushes up on a more sensitive spot, like in their tuck up or her thigh, then, or like her stomach area, then Chani doesn't like that, and she kind of jumps, and the baby starts to fall backwards. And luckily, I'm there to usually catch her before, she takes a hard fall. BB, too, loves our kid when she's calm. But when the baby's crawling to her because she wants to give her, some pets or play with her or see what's going on, BB actually gets scared. And so she'll run behind me or to the other side of the room. Again, usually that's not that big of a deal. But can you imagine if one of our girls, was known to bite when they were upset or, something weird happened, that could be a serious injury. So always supervise your young kids and babies with dogs. They're okay to be in the same room. There's really no health concern other than, injuries. And so we just want to be there to prevent that and to separate and, be a little proactive on that. Okay, next dog hot take. The food you feed your dog matters, and the treats as well. So I originally got my introduction into the pet industry at a bougie dog food, boutique, you can call it. It was a store, corporate, all across America. And they had 4 different store names because they had acquired a bunch of, more local brands. But that is something I learned very heavily there, is what you feed your dog does really matter. And I see it with my own girls. We have since swapped to a, pretty good kibble. We did have to downgrade because, we had a baby and that's expensive and she comes first, obviously. And so more of our money now is being, passed on towards her. But when we had our dogs on a half really amazing kibble, half raw food diet, they were in the best health ever. They were, had plenty of energy. Even Chani, who is a lazy little sack of potatoes, their fur was just glowing and super soft. And then their attitudes, you could just tell, was really good. And they loved their food because it was yummy. That's not to say that you can't feed your dog kibble. However, if you are in a position where you can get better than the Kirkland brand at Costco, I know a lot of people do it because it's super cost efficient, then do it. Really, the things that you want to look for are the first 5 ingredients is the biggest, key into what goes into your dog's food. You want to stay away from meals and, you want to make sure that meat is at least, 3 or 4 of those, pure meat, not any meals or anything. So that's what at least we looked for when we were swapping kibbles, and what I would always tell, the clients that I had at Chuck and Don's, at the bougie store. But yeah, so try if you can to get your dog a little something better, because it will help, it will help them be healthier. Just like us, we can choose to eat healthy as humans and, thrive a little more, or we can eat, hamburgers and French fries. And yeah, it's yummy, but it doesn't fuel your body like it needs. It's the same with dogs. All right, next hot take. An experienced handler doesn't mean that you've owned 1 or 2 dogs before, and you shouldn't own a dog with those needs, with the experienced handler needs. So for example, let's say that you owned a Yorkie or a Shih Tzu, and you taught them how to sit and how to walk on a leash. And so you decide your next dog should be a Rottweiler or Doberman Pinscher or German Shepherd or Belgian Malinois. There's so many kind of the hot names right now of the working class dogs, and guard dogs essentially. Experienced handler means that you have a lot of experience training. You know what needs the dog has and how to, help them. And we'll talk about this in a later hot take, but a lot of times we forget that dogs were bred for a very specific purpose. That's why there's so many different breeds, because each dog kind of covered its own little niche in its section of the world. So like a lot of the working class dogs and sporting dogs that are very popular, they were bred to think on their own. They could not have their handler with them 24/7, but they still had a job to do. So that is why you see a lot of, these dogs being destructive in the house. It's because their brain isn't being properly stimulated, or they're not getting enough exercise, or, they just don't have a job to do. And if they don't have that job to do too, no matter, what it is, then they resort to destructive behavior. So an experienced trainer knows that dog's behavior and how to train for it. Because you train, a Shih Tzu a lot differently than you do for like a poodle or a Doberman Pinscher even. Each have kind of different requirements in how they learn and how they best, can implement those and be a better, more, successful companion dog. Okay, and this is our second to last hot take, and then we will wrap up, so we're almost done. The next one is that dogs were bred for purpose, and we forget that when shopping for them. I feel like to first-time dog owners, this is very, very heavy, because a lot of first-time dog owners are shopping for a look, or, just a fluffy dog. However, we need to remember that not all dogs are good companion dogs. They can be if trained correctly and raised correctly, but the most successful, dogs and dog trainers are ones that know what that dog's job was for, how they think, and then how to, help implement that. So while you may really want that fluffy poodle, if you cannot provide them with enough exercise, mental stimulation, enrichment, and then the proper training, even though they are very smart dogs, you should not be getting that dog. Instead, you might want to consider something that is, doesn't require as much, exercise, like a, toy or a mini sized dog. And there are toy and mini poodles. But again, like if you're shopping for a look and you want a big, tough looking dog, like a Rottweiler or a Doberman, but you also want them to be a cuddly, friendly companion dog, yes, they can do that, but they do have to have certain needs met for them to be able to be the nice, lovely, companion and cuddle bug that you want them to be. So that's just something I would personally recommend looking into. Dogs 101 is amazing. They kind of tell in a very short synopsis what the dog was bred to do and kind of the needs and requirements for them, health, grooming, training, and exercise-wise, and if they're like a good family dog or not. So definitely do more research on your dog breed before going out and buying it. All right, and here we are at our last hot take. And again, this one should surprise absolutely no one if you know me and where I stand in the dog world. But nobody should be paying thousands of dollars for a designer dog, or a mutt. That's really what they are. A designer dog is just, the fancy, business word for, we made a mutt. So, yeah, like any doodle, I know most doodles now go for like, usually it's like $3,000, whereas you could get a poodle, which is a perfectly good option. You can make it look, you can put it in a teddy bear cut and it will look identical to most doodles. You can get a better dog for cheaper, and it's the purebred option. And a lot of times the poodle, even though yes, it is still high grooming maintenance, a lot of times it's less grooming maintenance than your doodle counterparts because it doesn't have that double coat like most doodles do. Yeah, I mean, my first dog was a designer dog. It was a little shorty. Um, but at the end of the day, it was a mutt. It was, we looked at it on KSL, which is basically the Craigslist of Utah. And it was, some family that had like 12 dogs, I swear, in their house. They had a Great Dane all the way down to tiny little Shih Tzu. But yeah, the Shih Tzu had bred with the neighbor's dog. Man, they probably should have spayed and neutered their dogs. And then they had a litter, and so that's how we got our dog. Not a neighbor though. We actually they were selling them on KSL. If I could go back, I would probably do it differently, but we loved our Riley with all of our hearts. But yeah, don't pay that much money for a mutt, especially when they're not going to be well-behaved dogs. There are much better options if you want a cuddly companion dog. There are literally some dog breeds that were bred to be companion dogs. You have like your Maltese, you got your Shih Tzus, you got your Lhasa Apso. There's a lot of those smaller toy breeds that were bred to be companion dogs, and so they are, a lot calmer temperament just by nature. Obviously, they're still in the toy breeds. They do bark a lot. That's one of the things you got to help train out. But overall, they do a lot better as a companion dog than the fluffy doodle that was bred from, from two working class dogs. So yeah, don't pay more money for a mutt. Just go to your local adoption or animal rescue to get one of those. And that is all of my hot takes. I forgot to put this at the beginning. I'll put it in editing. But these are all my opinions. There's no judgment. I do not judge any dog that comes into me with long nails and say, oh my goodness, they're being abused at home. That's just my personal opinion. But I do not put any of that onto my pet parents or mad at dogs. I'm not like, oh my goodness, this pet parent is so neglectful. Usually it comes down to the pet parent was uneducated in those situations. So then it's my job as a professional to help educate. But yeah, those are my opinions. Not all facts. Take what you will. Hopefully this was fun to just have a little bit into, my brain and some of kind of the out there opinions that I do have on the dog world. But until next time, we will see you later. Stay safe out there and tell your dogs I said hello and give them lots of puppy kisses from me. Bye-bye.